Hello students, welcome to Byju's IS. Welcome to a session on economy this week, wherein we'll be taking some of the very important articles that have appeared in various business related newspapers and we'll be analyzing these particular articles. For this particular video, I've chosen the time period from 15th to 29th of June 2020 and the articles that I've chosen are from Business Line, Hindu, Business Standard, Indian Express and Livemint. Let's begin the discussion. The first article is related to WPI deflation. Now, before discussing what is given in the article, what do you mean by the concept of inflation? Then we'll connect it to WPI deflation. Inflation basically is a measure of increase or rise in the price level of basket of commodities. I'll repeat the statement here. Inflation measures how much is the price rise in the basket of commodities. Now, inflation is measured under two heads. One is WPI, Wholesale Price Index, and the second one is CPI, Consumer Price Index. What is the basic difference between these two? In case of WPI, we measure the increase in the price level of basket of commodities in the wholesale market. Now, what do you mean by wholesale market? In simple terms, where one company sells to another company. That is business to business, the sales is happening. Whereas in case of a CPI, Consumer Price Index, it measures the increase in the price level of basket of commodities at the retail level. The first one is at the wholesale level and the second one is at a retail level. What do you mean by retail level? Retail level is basically meaning where you and me will purchase the goods or commodities in the market. So which will affect a common man more or which is directly impacting the common man? It will be the CPI, Consumer Price Index. That is the first very important difference. Second, whenever I use the term index in the context of, let's say, economics, for example, there will be a concept of indexation in case of a CPI WPI. There is an indexation in case of a IIP. Whenever you use the term index, it basically means we are comparing one number with a particular number. That is the concept of a base year. So the base year in case of a calculation of a WPI is a 2011 and 12. And in case of CPI, it is 2012. I'll focus on WPI here. Why? The article is based on the concept of a WPI. WPI is given by the Ministry of Commerce. To be more precise, it is given by economic advisor functioning under the Ministry of Commerce. Now, using the term Ministry of Commerce, in the exams, he might give you DPIIT, Department for Promotion of Industry and Internal Trade, which is working under the Ministry of Commerce itself. So, do not get confused if either one of them are used in the UPSC exams. Next, in calculation of a WPI, what is usually considered? In calculation of WPI, we consider three groups of items. These particular three groups of items are manufactured items, second one is primary articles, and the third one is fuel and power. Now, of the three, another very important prelims based question could be the concept of weightages. Which is given the highest weight amongst or of these three groups, which will carry the highest weightage. The highest weightage has been given for manufactured items. I'm just rounding off the numbers, around 64%. The next highest weight is for primary articles, around 23%, and remaining 13% is in the form of weightage given to fuel and power. So if UPSC prelims ask you to arrange them either in ascending order or descending order, you will have to remember the weightages like this. Next, what is the importance of measuring WPI? Since there is already CPI, which affects all of us, what is the importance of measuring WPI? Please understand, WPI basically measures the pricing power of the producers. It measures what is the increase in the price level at the production level. And if a WPI increases, there is more likelihood that even CPI will get affected. In simple terms, if the price levels increase in the wholesale market, there is every likelihood, again underline the term likelihood or probability in increase in the CPI, which will affect all of us. Again, I'm using the term likelihood for a simple reason. What commodities are taken in calculation of WPI are different compared to what commodities are taken and their weightages under CPI. That is precisely the reason why usually you will see there is a diversion between CPI and WPI. At certain points of time, if you study the evolution of both CPI and as well as a WPI would have taken a dive, whereas a CPI would have kept on moving upwards. For a simple reason, in case of a WPI, highest weightage has been given for what? Manufactured items. In case of CPI, highest weightage has been given for food items or food articles. So whenever there is an increase in the price level of food articles, which is happening in the present context, all of us will usually experience a higher rate of inflation under CPI, because a very high amount of a weightage, around 45 to 46%, has been given for food commodities under CPI. Now, apart from this, what is given in the article? For the first time in the last couple of years, WPI has entered into deflation. Now, what is deflation in the first place? Deflation is a negative inflation rate. I'll repeat it. Deflation basically measures to a negative inflation rate. Now, what do you mean by this? In case of the term inflation, we usually say that the price levels have kept on increasing. For example, the price levels could have increased from 100 rupees to 110 to 116 to 125, so on and so forth. So whenever the price level of basket of commodities have kept on increasing like this basically measures inflation. And whenever price levels will keep on declining, falling down, it basically is a measure of deflation. Now, why deflation has happened? The deflation has happened because of the pandemic, which has basically disrupted the production as well as supply chains in the economy. As a result of this, there is a deflation which has been experienced under all the groups of articles, that is primary articles, fuel and power, as well as manufactured products. All of them have shown or have experienced a deflation. Apart from this, what is more important is we will have to be very careful with respect to measurement of a WPI or the outcome of WPI in the present context, for a simple reason. In the policy making, for example, RBI's policy as well as Government of India's policy making, the inflation that they usually consider is CPI, especially in case of RBI, which decides monetary policy. Rather than using WPI as a nominal anchor, they have shifted to using CPI as a nominal anchor. In simple terms, whether to increase or decrease any rate, for example, the repo rate, the decision will be based on the concept of a CPI itself. So CPI is being used as a nominal anchor for the last couple of years in the policy making. Since CPI is very difficult to be measured in the present context because of the pandemic, it has become very difficult for NSO to give you the data related to CPI for the last 2 months. In the absence of this particular data, WPI makes a very important source of data for the policy making. Because as already mentioned, I've said that whenever there is a variation in WPI, there is a likelihood that it will also have an impact on the CPI. And in the present context, although whole of a WPI, that is headline WPI, is showing a deflation, within this, the food commodities, that is a WPI food index, is showing an inflationary trend. And I've already mentioned this. The food articles have been given a very high weightage in case of CPI. So when there's a food inflation under WPI, there is very likelihood that we will also experience certain volatility or variation in case of CPI. So these are some of the very important points related to this particular idea for WPI deflation. Moreover, this particular deflation in case of WPI is an indicator that the economic activity or the production or manufacturing activity in case of Indian economy has been disrupted because of the pandemic, which is a very good indicator that the overall GDP growth rate will also be affected. So these are some of the very important points related to WPI. Now let's have a look at the questions based on this particular discussion. First, consider the following statements about WPI. It is issued by NSO, wrong. It is issued by Ministry of Commerce. Second, the WPI is used as a nominal anchor in the policy making by RBI, wrong. The RBI uses CPI as a nominal anchor in the policy making decisions. So both the statements are wrong. Right option will be option D, both are false. Let's look at the next question here. Arrange the following articles in the WPI in descending order of their weightage. Underline the term descending, which means I'll have to start with the group with the highest weightage, then keep on going downwards with the lower weightages. The highest weightage has been given for manufactured items, second highest or next highest has been given for primary articles, and the lowest has been given for fuel and power. So the descending order of the weightage will be 3, 1 and 2. So the right option will be option B. Next question. Consider the following statements about WPI. It measures the pricing at the producer level. We have discussed this, correct? The base year for the calculation is 2004 and 5, wrong. The WPI rebasing is based on the recommendations of Soumitra Chaudhary Committee. Now, what is this particular statement? Please understand this. This particular statement, by the way, is correct. Let me elaborate on this. Earlier, the base year for the calculation of WPA was 2004 and 2005. There was a committee set up by the name Soumitra Chaudhary Committee. This particular committee not only recommended rebasing of WPA from 04-05 to 2011 and 12, it also recommended rebasing in terms of changing the composition of the basket of commodities. Earlier, with the base year of 2004 and 5, the number of commodities in the basket was 676, and with the change in the base year to 11 and 12, the number of commodities were changed to 697. So the committee which recommended all of this was Soumitra Chaudhary Committee. So first statement is correct. Third statement is correct. Right option will be option D. Only 1 and 3 are correct. The next article is related to fuel prices. In the recent times, there has been a lot of discussion related to the idea of fuel pricing in India for a simple reason. For consecutive more than 10 to 15 days in India, the fuel prices at the retail level, that is petrol as well as diesel, the prices have kept on increasing, which will have a negative impact on the households. Now, there has been certain criticism against this particular policy. Although Government of India has stated that the fuel prices are decided based on the market prices, but in the present context, we are seeing that the government at the center as well as the state level are controlling or are influencing the fuel prices at the retail level. Now, let's have a discussion related to this particular concept. Now, in case of India, the import dependency on the fuel, that is basically the crude, has kept on increasing. Generally, we say that import dependency for India's crude is more than 80%. In simple terms, 80% of the demand in case of the Indian market for crude is imported from the external market. We have imported from various of the OPEC countries. We have also started importing crude from USA from 2017. Now, apart from this, whenever there is a volatility in the exchange rate and whenever there is a change in the international crude prices, this will have an impact on the import bill of crude. Let me elaborate on this. Imagine we are importing a crude which is priced at 1 barrel at $50. Now, if in the international market, the Brent crude prices increase to 1 barrel at $60, can I simply say that the import bill for the crude will increase? Yes. Second, whenever there is a change or volatility in the exchange rate, that is specifically whenever rupee depreciates, it will have an impact on the import bill of the crude. What do you mean by this? Imagine today the exchange rate is $1 is equal to 50 rupees, and after 1 month exchange rate is $1 is equal to 60 rupees. If I'm importing, just hypothetically let's say, only $1 worth of a crude last month or right now, I'll be paying how much? 50 rupees, and in the next month I'll be paying how much? 60 rupees. In simple terms, the import of a crude will become costlier in the domestic market. Now, what has happened in the recent times? In case of the recent times, the international crude oil prices have declined to historic lows. And when the international crude oil prices have declined, is it okay if I say that the import price of the crude will also be low, will be lesser? And when the import prices of the crude have become lower like this, or the crude has become cheaper when imported, don't you think the retail prices should also become cheaper, or retail prices should also experience a decline? It has not happened at a satisfactory level in case of India. Why so? Let me elaborate on this. Now, what is a supply chain system in case of the fuels? First, the crude will be imported. Then there will be the OMCs, which will be basically purifying this, refining it, and they will impose certain charges on it. Then they will be transporting it at a retail level, let's say at the petrol bunk level or at a distributor level. Now, once it is going to be distributed, again there is a distributor margin. And in addition to all of this, there is a freight margin or a freight transportation cost. But apart from these particular charges, a much bigger and important charge will be in the form of taxes. These particular taxes on fuels, that is petrol as well as diesel, will be imposed by the central government as well as by the state government. Central government will impose a tax in the form of excise duty, and state will impose the tax in the form of VAT, value added tax. The basic difference between both of them is In case of the states, they usually impose a VAT in the form of a percentage. And in case of the central government, they will fix a certain amount of a tax per liter of fuel, such as petrol as well as diesel. Now, what has happened in the recent times? The import bill or the cost of imports of the crude have declined because the Brent crude, which forms around 25% of the total imports done by India, has experienced a decline. And since there has been a decline in the Brent crude oil prices or the Brent crude futures, the import cost for the crude paid by India also has come down. On one side, this component has come down, but on the other hand, the taxes which are imposed by the center as well as state have kept on increasing. Both center as well as states at various points of time in the last couple of months itself have kept on revising upwards the taxes that they've imposed on both petrol as well as diesel at the retail level. Now, what is the impact of this? Whenever the international crude oil prices will increase, this particular increase is basically transferred into the hands or on the shoulders of the consumer in the market. The consumer or all of us will have to pay higher amount to purchase these particular fuels at the retail level. And when the crude oil prices in the international market have started declining, center as well as state, by increasing the taxes imposed on these particular fuels at the retail level, have ensured that the consumers will get very little benefit out of this particular decline in the international crude oil prices. It's like saying, in either case, the consumer will end up paying higher prices for these particular fuels. Whenever the prices in the international market will increase, we will end up paying very high. But when the prices are declining, we should get the benefit. But center as well as state, by imposing very high amount of taxes, have ensured that most of the benefit will get nullified. That has been the criticism against this particular policy. But moreover, what is to be noted here is this. Government in the year 2010 announced that petrol prices will be deregulated. In 2014, again announced that diesel prices will be deregulated, which means the prices of both of them will be decided on the market forces. On the international crude oil prices, whenever they keep on changing, the prices in the domestic market will also keep on changing. And presently, we are basically following a concept called as dynamic pricing mechanism, where on day-to-day basis, on everyday basis, the prices of these particular fuels at the retail level will be changing. That is a precise reason in the last couple of days we have seen that there is a sudden surge, increase continuous in the price levels of these particular commodities in the retail market. Now, what is the impact of all of this? On one side, Government of India says that we have imposed a higher tax and are collecting so that our revenues increase, and we can use this particular revenue for a specific purpose. Because on the other side, what has happened? The expenditures of Government of India have got affected. Expenditures of states have got affected because of the onset of the pandemic. And on the other side, their revenues are very, very less. So they have entered into a situation where their corporate taxes, income taxes collection have taken a hit. So in order to shore up, in order to collect more and more revenues, they have imposed a higher taxes and are utilizing these particular taxes for specific purposes. But you'll have to look at the other side of the coin. What is the other side of the coin? As a common man, all of us will get affected by this particular policy of the government. Our argument is very simple. When you have deregulated the prices, why are you basically controlling or deciding or influencing these particular prices in the retail market? Don't you think it is basically affecting the policy of deregulation itself? Second, even today, most of the public transportation is not active. That is because of the lockdown, because of certain restrictions, the public transportation has been affected. As a result of this, most of us are basically utilizing our own vehicles to move from here and there or point A to point B. At this point of a time, when our incomes, because of the onset of the pandemic, has been affected, many of us have lost jobs. Many of us have also accepted pay cuts by the companies. At this point of a time, when our incomes are getting affected, Government of India as well as the state governments have ensured that the fuel prices will remain higher. Don't you think this will affect the consumption patterns of the households? It will become a burden on the households. Next, Government of India on one side imposed lockdown, and on the other side started increasing the prices of the fuels by imposing higher taxes. Now, when you have imposed a lockdown, economic activity has been affected, consumption of fuels has declined by a huge margin. What is the logic of increasing the fuel prices? And moreover, very recently a survey has shown that the taxes which are imposed on fuels in case of India at the retail level are the highest in the world. Around 69% of fuel prices in the retail market are because of the taxes which are imposed by the center as well as state. So these are some of the very important points related to the concept of fuel prices. Now, based on this, let's look at a question here. Consider the following statements. The import dependence on crude has been increasing in the last 5 years. Yes. US has started exporting crude to India from 2017. Both the statements are correct. Right option will be option C. I've given a descriptive question which you'll have to answer in 250 words. Oil prices, rather than being a concern on the financial front for the government, has become an important source of revenue. Elaborate. Now let me give you certain points related to the question here. Earlier, what was the situation? Government of India was always worried about the crude oil prices. Why? Whenever the crude oil prices shot upwards or moved higher in the international market, one, there was outflow of forex reserves, very precious forex reserves used to go out. Second, the trade deficit used to increase. The current account deficit would also be higher. In addition to this, the government of India would provide subsidies at the retail level to the households for the consumption of LPG as well as kerosene. So when the crude oil prices increases, obviously the LPG as well as kerosene prices will start increasing, which basically means the subsidies payout of the government will also increase, which will basically lead to what? Higher revenue deficit, higher fiscal deficit. So all these were the concerns of the government earlier. But in the present context, what has the government done? It has utilized this particular decline in the international crude oil prices to shore up a huge amount of revenues at both central as well as state level. That is the basic gist of the question here. I'll read out the question again. Oil prices, rather than being a concern on the financial front for the government, has become an important source of revenue. So this is a descriptive question. The next article is related to market economy tag. Very important from the perspective of UPSC prelims. Now let me discuss what is given in the article. China became a member of WTO in the year 2001. And after it becoming a member, basically there was one agreement signed. As per this particular agreement, for the next 15 years, China would be treated with the tag of a non-market economy. Now, what do you mean by this particular market economy and non-market economy? Let me start. In case of market economy, it basically means that the market is deciding, or the market forces are deciding the prices of the commodities. For example, in case of India, majority of the commodities which are supplied in the market are decided based on the market forces of supply as well as a demand. But in case of China, for the first 15 years, it would be treated as a non-market economy, which meant that in case of China, rather than market deciding, market allocating these particular resources, it would be the state or the government which will have an important foothold in making decisions related to these particular allocation of resources. Hence, for the first 15 years, since China joining WTO, it was given a tag of a non-market economy. And from 2016, China has been asking for the status of a market economy or the tag of a market economy. Now, what is the importance of this particular tag? Now, let me explain why China has been accorded with a non-market economy. For a simple reason, in case of China, the government there provides huge amount of subsidies for various industries, has been accused of the manipulation in terms of pricing as well as the currency manipulation. There is no transparency in terms of lending as well as a decision on interest rates in these particular markets. As a result of this, what happens is the trading partners such as USA, European Union, India, etc. are allowed to impose certain tariffs or taxes in the form of anti-dumping duties when imports will come from China into these particular economies. I'll repeat the statement so that it is clear for you. In case of China, the government there intervenes in the market in the form of what? Providing huge amount of subsidies, has been accused of a currency manipulation, interest rate manipulation, no transparency whatsoever in terms of financial market. As a result of all of this, the other trading partners, when they import certain commodities from China, they are allowed to impose anti-dumping duties. Now, let me elaborate on the concept of anti-dumping duty. Before that, what do you mean by dumping in the first place? Imagine there is an exporter in China. He exports a particular product to India, but the price at which he exports to India is much, much lesser than the price at which he is going to sell it in the domestic market. In simple terms, this particular exporter has suppressed the prices and has exported these particular commodities to the other trading partners. Now, what is the advantage? Advantage is, since China manufactures everything on economies of scale, the cost of production for them is very, very low. And when they sell at suppressed prices to other trading partners, such as, let's say, India, these imports, when they land into India, even at suppressed price levels, are very, very cheap compared to the prices at which the domestic manufacturers in India are manufacturing. As a result of this, these particular imports from China will become very, very competitive. The domestic manufacturers in India will be affected. So, to overcome this particular situation, which is referred as a dumping activity, the trading partners are allowed to impose a tax or a tariff called as anti-dumping duty. And these particular exporters from China are able to suppress their prices because they are getting subsidies from the government, or the Chinese government is manipulating the currency. Interest rates are not transparent, which basically decides the lending rate in China, etc. So, because of this particular practice of a dumping activity of Chinese manufacturers, the trading partners were allowed to impose anti-dumping duties. Now, the demand has been that the 15-year time period is over. China has been asking for a market economy tag so that this particular idea of a dumping activity will be curtailed. Chinese exports will become much more competitive with the international market. The USA has declined to accord this particular status or a tag to China. European Union has decided not to give it. As a result of this, China has already filed complaints against both of these particular countries at WTO. Now, in case of India, apart from all the rhetoric related to India-China trade that has been happening, Government of India very recently has stated that it will not be providing or according the market economy tag for China. Now, if I say the non-market economy tag will continue, what is the basic idea of a calculation of a dumping duty? How will India decide to impose a dumping duty or anti-dumping duty on these particular imports? Basically, understand this. There is one concept called as a surrogate country methodology. What will happen in a surrogate country methodology? Rather than taking the data from China, rather than collecting the data from China based on their cost of production, I will be taking the cost of production data from some other country. And this particular data from the other country that I'm taking will be referred as a surrogate country. Now, the argument of Chinese manufacturers and exporters has been that since 15-year time period is over, this particular methodology should not be applied to China, and India, for example, should be taking the data of production directly from China. But Government of India has rejected these particular claims and has stated that it will not be according a market economy tag to China. So this is the basis of discussion related to this particular article. Next is related to tier 2 bonds. Now please understand this. Under Basel III guidelines, the banks are supposed to meet certain criteria, or they are supposed to meet certain standards. One of the very important provision under the Basel III guideline is related to capital adequacy ratio, which basically means since the banks are in lending activity or in the business of lending, they are going to face a certain issues of losses. And to curtail these particular losses, to cover for these particular losses, they will have to maintain certain capital. The capital that the bank has to maintain under the Basel III guidelines basically is referred as a capital adequacy ratio. Having said so, remember this also. Capital adequacy ratio was given under Basel I also, was given under Basel II also. In Basel 3, the limit has been increased. So the capital requirements under Basel 3 are 11.5% of what? Of risk weighted assets. Now this particular capital will be maintained under two heads. One is called as a tier 1 capital and the second one is tier 2 capital. What is the basic difference? Tier 1 capital is more reliable. Tier 2 capital is comparatively less reliable. Tier 1 capital is referred as a core capital. Tier 2 capital is also referred as a supplementary capital. For example, in Tier 1 capital, the most important one is a paid up capital, and in case of a Tier 2 capital is a subordinated debt. Now, what is the issue here? RBI, in order to ensure that banks in India will meet the capital adequacy ratio or capital requirements under Basel III guidelines, has allowed the banks to issue bonds under both the tiers. That is, banks have issued tier 1 bonds as well as tier 2 bonds. Now, the problem with respect to these particular bonds or these kind of bonds is this. Generally, when we use the term bonds, the returns are guaranteed. That is, imagine I'm a corporate entity or I'm government of India. I've issued a bond to you people and I've guaranteed a coupon rate or interest rate of a 10%. It basically means I will have to pay this particular 10% coupon rate or interest to you. But in case of these kind of bonds or hybrid bonds or perpetual bonds, if the bank is not earning sufficient revenues or if the bank is a financial distress, they might simply announce that they will not pay the coupon rate or interest rate to the investors. Earlier, RBI had basically asked the Yes Bank not to give the coupon amount as well as basically cancel the outstanding liability under tier 1 bonds. And now RBI has asked this particular bank not to even announce the interest rate or interest amount for those investors who have invested in tier 2 bonds. So this is the latest issue that has been happening in case of the Yes Bank. Now, what is the reason as to why RBI has asked this particular bank not to pay the interest on these particular outstanding tier 2 bonds? RBI has stated that the financials of the bank are very weak, and in this particular situation, it doesn't make any sense for the bank to pay out the interest on these particular outstanding bonds. As a result of this, RBI has asked the bank not to pay the interest. Now, what is the impact of this? The impact is that in any delay or non-payment of interest on these particular bonds, it will be considered as a default. And when you default on the outstanding payment like this, your credit rating will be affected. And has already happened in case of Yes Bank. And when your credit rating gets affected, it becomes very difficult for you to borrow from the domestic market or from any other source also. So this is the point of discussion in case of this particular article. So these are some of the very important articles as well as the questions related to these particular articles for this particular time period. Thank you. Have a good day.